Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's movie is 1966's The Oscar, directed by Russell Rouse. There are two kinds of bad movies. The first is the kind we usually show, super low-budget independent or small studio movies with tepid direction, cheap sets, laughable scripts, and starring unknowns that are on their way to becoming full-fledged nobodies. Movies like these are a dime a dozen, but that doesn't mean they're not fun to watch. One of the reasons they're fun to watch is because they don't have any pretensions. They don't have any pretensions to greatness. At least most of them don't. The other kind is the kind you're about to see. Hollywood movies that millions of dollars were spent on with the best set design, costuming, and crews and equipment that money could buy, and filled with megastars that fill the secondary and cameo roles. Movies that are released with an amazing amount of ballyhoo and die within a week, laughed out of theaters. There are dozens of them, some better known than others, but the one you'll see tonight is one of the forgotten dogs, The Oscar. The original story this movie was based on was about an actor, Frankie Fain, who's nominated for an Oscar as Best Actor, and outlines how he tries to sabotage the chances of the other nominees through lies, backstabbing, and blackmail. The movie, however, is the story of Frankie Fain, a rat who becomes an actor, stays a rat, becomes famous, continues to be a rat, starts to lose his career until he's nominated for an Oscar, and then, rat that he is, starts a sabotage campaign, not against the other actors, but himself. He figures this will get him the sympathy vote and he'll be a shoo-in. Okay, that doesn't sound like a great story, but it sounds like it might be interesting. Maybe. I never read the original book, so I don't know how far the screenplay deviates from it, but boy, oh brother, is the screenplay for this movie a dog. There are several things you should never do with a screenplay, like making a lot of pop culture references or attempting to make the dialogue hip, since usually by the time the movie gets made, all of the references and hip dialogue are either out of date or hysterically lame. This movie's screenplay falls into the latter category, and I'll tell you, it falls with a thud. I was a kid at the time this movie was made, but I never heard anyone talk like the characters in this movie, ever. Just about everyone talks in this horrendously florid manner, using similes and metaphors that no one in their right mind would ever use. Oddly, the movie is full of quotable dialogue, although you can only throw quotes from this movie out to other people who have seen it, since if you quote it to people who haven't seen it, they'll just give you a strange look and probably never speak to you again. There are times horrendous dialogue can be made to sound merely disgusting, but it takes one hell of an actor to do that. It takes a great actor who believes in the project enough to go that extra mile to sell the line as best they can. There are quite a few good, if not great, actors in this movie, but to tell you the truth, I don't think any of them, with the exceptions of Elke Sommer and Tony Bennett, had any faith whatsoever in this movie being anything than what it turned out to be. A big-budgeted, overhyped melodrama with unlikable characters and incredibly stilted dialogue. Harlan Ellison was hired to turn the story into a screenplay, and after turning it in, it was rewritten by director Rouse and Clarence Green. Now, I can't speak as to the quality of the original screenplay, as I've never seen it, although I would love to. And Ellison, who is, I think, justifiably proud of his prowess as a writer, has never made any bones about it. He was once quoted as saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Even when I write a bad movie, it's the best bad movie ever made." Although the screenplay is hugely responsible for the non-quality of the finished film, the casting is another culprit. Elke Sommer is an incredibly beautiful woman, but she's never been what I'd call a world-class actress. I think her best performance was as assassin Irma Eichmann in 1966's Deadlier Than a Male, but all that role required of her was to be stunningly beautiful and cold as ice, which isn't a stretch for any actress. I have an ex-girlfriend who could have played that role perfectly, as a matter of fact. To be fair to Miss Sommer, however, I feel compelled to point out that even Meryl Streep would have sucked in this role. Now, suppose you're a director and you have a phenomenally talented and popular Italian-American singer wanting to break into acting at your disposal. Would you, A, cast him in a role that takes advantage of his natural talent and popularity that doesn't put too much of a strain on his inexperience as an actor, or B, cast him as a Jewish-Irish guy named Jaime Kelly? I know what it's like being an actor. Not on a huge scale, of course, but I've had a little experience on the screen, and it's kind of like laying your genitals on a railroad track and hoping the train will stop. I can't speak for anyone else, like, people who are professional actors and have had training and the like, but after reading a script, I have ideas of how the character would act and react to what happens to them. But that doesn't always tally with what the director has in mind. In that case, you pretty much just put yourself in the hands of the director and do what you're told, even if what he has in mind doesn't go in the same direction with what you have in mind. You may not agree with what they want, but then again, it's not your movie. I make my thoughts known, but in the end, I do as I'm instructed to do, and as well as I can do it, because that's my job. I've been lucky enough to work with directors that, for the most part, know what they're doing, so that hasn't been that much of a struggle. That said, I have no idea how any director could listen to the dialogue written for this movie and say, yes, perfect, cut, print that. But that's what happened here. Being a writer myself, I know how tough it is to write dialogue. When I write something, I'll let it sit for a day or so and then open it up and read it back out loud just to see how it flows and if it fits into my mouth. What I mean by that is that I have a rather bad habit of writing run-on sentences, and ones where I fit so many different ideas into one sentence they run on for near paragraphs. I'm sure that one or two of them will pop up in this very intro if they haven't already. On a completely unrelated note, one of the things I see in this movie, and have seen in others, mostly ones with Nicolas Cage, is the extensive use of eyeliner on actors. I just don't get that. I suspect it's used to bring their eyes out, but it just looks fruity to me, and it takes me out of the movie. Every time I see Heidi Kelly in this film, if I'm not dry heaving over the dialogue, I'm pondering that eyeliner and waiting for someone to call the character Sophie. Stephen Boyd was born William Miller on July 4th, 1931 in Glengormley, Northern Ireland, United Kingdom. Born into a family of 11, he studied bookkeeping in college, working in an insurance office and travel agency by day, and studied acting by night and on the weekends. He became the go-to guy for theater troupes all over Ireland, eventually joining the Ulster Theatre Group and doing a lot of radio plays, but abandoned that to pursue work in London. Life in London was difficult. He fell ill soon after moving there and supported himself working as a waiter and doorman in between acting jobs. He always wrote home and assured his mother that he was doing fine, not wanting her to worry. His break came when Sir Michael Redgrave found him while working at the Odeon Theatre and arranged an introduction for him at the Windsor Repertory Company, where he became the leading man and part-time director for the Arts Council Midland Theatre Company. He went into television while in London and appeared in just about every major play produced for the BBC. He was signed to a 7-year contract with 20th Century Fox and appeared in 65 movies and television shows in his career, moving back to Europe when he found the Hollywood roles he was offered unsatisfying. Boyd was an actor dedicated to both his art and his family, taking care to send money home to Ireland to support them. He never based his decisions on the amount of money the role paid. He was more interested in character and plot than remuneration. Interestingly, he was the first choice of producers Cubby Broccoli and Albert Saltzman to play the role of James Bond in 1962's Dr. No. That would have been interesting, I think. I mean, Sean Connery will always be the best Bond to me, but Boyd certainly fit the description of Bond, and he definitely had the physical presence to bring off the role. There's an interesting story about his performance as Masala in 1959's Ben-Hur, incidentally. The way I heard it, Boyd was chatting about the character with Gore Vidal, the screenwriter. He mentioned that there seemed to be a subtext in the screenplay implying that Masala and Ben-Hur, who were boyhood friends, seemed to be a bit closer than boys normally are. Vidal confirmed Boyd's interpretation, saying he deliberately wrote a gay subtext into the relationship between the two. Boyd was delighted as it deepened his understanding of the character. He went to the director, William Wyler, and discussed the idea with him. Wyler agreed, saying it was a good idea, then motioned Boyd closer and whispered, "Don't tell Chuck Heston, he wouldn't like that." Stephen Boyd's performance in this film is nothing to judge his career by. Watching it, I get the feeling that he knew just how trashy this movie really was and thought, well, what the hell, the script's so awful there's nothing I can do to improve it, so I'll just go nuts. And go nuts he does. His performance is one of the best things about this movie, and the more I watch it, the more I believe he just went nuts with the role. It has a ton of enjoyment to watching this. Stephen Boyd died of a massive heart attack while playing golf on June 2nd, 1977 in Northridge, California. Elke Sommer was born Elsie Schletz-Ho on November 5, 1940 in Berlin, Spandau, Germany. She appeared in 101 movies and television shows during a long career and speaks 7 languages fluently. She originally wanted to become a diplomatic translator but went into modeling instead. While on vacation in Italy, she won a beauty contest and caught the eye of director Vittorio De Sica, which led to her being cast in several Italian movies. She moved on to appearing in films in her native Germany and became an international sex symbol at the outset of the 1960s, helped along by an appearance or two in Playboy magazine. She moved to Hollywood and appeared in films like 1963's The Prize and 1964's A Shot in the Dark, directed by Blake Edwards with a screenplay by William Peter Blatty, author of The Exorcist. She started painting at a young age and continues to this day, having her first gallery showing at the Mackenzie Galleries in Beverly Hills in 1965. Elke Sommer is an incredibly beautiful woman, no doubt about it. And you gotta love the way she says, Frankie. Tony Bennett was born Anthony Dominic Benedetto on August 3, 1926 in Astoria, New York. At the age of 10, he sang at the opening of the Triborough Bridge and went on to work as a singing waiter to help support his family. Drafted into the Army during World War II, he saw action on the front lines and helped liberate the Landsberg concentration camp. After being mustered out of the Army, he studied music under the GI Bill and created his own style of singing, being invited to join a concert tour by Bob Hope in 1949. Hope suggested he adopt the name Tony Bennett as a stage name, and his career just grew from that point on. He worked with the finest talents of jazz music and throughout his life became a legend for his mellow singing style. His career hit a dip in the 1960s when the British invasion, led by the Beatles, hit the U.S. and Columbia Records forced him to change his image and style. He tried his hand at acting, the result being this movie, and eventually founded an independent label, releasing 2 acclaimed albums. He moved to England and performed for the Queen, but back home found only 1 regular gig in Las Vegas. He became addicted to drugs and suffered an overdose in 1979. His son from the first of his 2 marriages, Danny Bennett, became his manager. Danny had his father go back to his original style, appearing in tuxedos and singing his classics. Bennett found a new audience with young people, recording with Katie Lang, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Elvis Costello, and his old friend Frank Sinatra. In 1994 and 2000, he appeared on MTV's Unplugged show, gaining more new friends and got inducted into the Big Band and Jazz Hall of Fame in 1997. He plays it smart in movies these days, only appearing in such films as 1999's Analyze This and 2003's Bruce Almighty as himself. He's still working today. There are a ton of other people I should do bios for that appear in this movie. Milton Berle, Eleanor Parker, Joseph Cotton, Jill St. John, Ernest Borgnine, Broderick Crawford. There are so many stars in this movie it's hard to grasp. Of course, some of them are just cameos, but others are fairly substantial roles. The thing of it is, though, just about everybody in this movie is awful. Milton Berle comes off best, I think, and Jack Sue is great, as always. And pay particular attention to the spill Ernest Borgnine takes in the latter half of the movie, because it is priceless. When this movie came out, I was too young to appreciate it for what it was. I rediscovered it years later in the late 70s through the blessing that was 8 All Night, the Midnight to Dawn movies they showed on Channel 8 before the advent of the infomercial. I discovered a good number of movies watching that, usually snowed out on my skull with 2 or 3 of my buddies. I managed to get a copy of it on VHS, but it disappeared into the ether some time ago. I doubt there will ever be a legitimate release of this movie on DVD, and you can imagine how delighted I was when my good friend Big Al called me and informed me the Oscar was about to be on TV. I'm telling you, I was on that like ugly on an ape. It was the first time I'd seen it in years, and it was every bit as awful as I remembered it being. I would have loved to have secured a letterbox copy, but full frame is better than nothing. Watching this again was like rediscovering a long-lost friend, sitting down with them to talk, and then remembering why the 2 of you drifted apart. You know you'll never be as close as you once were, but every once in a while it's good to get together and laugh. So right now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the Oscar, right here on Cleveland Classic Cinema.